All right, a very good evening. You're watching India Today going live with me, Nabila Jamal. I'm going to take you through a roundup of stories on a regular basis. Today's stories, like you may have seen on the headlines, the farmers' protest has been snowballing. It's gone beyond proportions, violent proportions there, with farmers insisting that they must be let into Delhi, considering that they've been demanding for amendments in the new farmers' laws at least for 2 months now. In fact, close to 12 farmers said to have lost their lives over the last few months of agitation. They've been protesting vehemently against the new farm laws put forth by the central government, which has been approved in the parliament as well. Their grouse is the minimum support price that has not been guaranteed to the farmers, which was the practice all along for decades now. Now it seems with the new farm laws, the minimum support price has not been guaranteed in the laws. In fact, the central government trying to convince the farmers, saying that minimum support price will be given, but nothing has been written in the law. It's not a written mandate in the law, and that's what's upsetting farmers, saying that now, considering the new laws will allow private players to come into agriculture, and it also does not limit farmers to sell produce only to agents or only to limited people in the mandis. Farmers can now sell produce to anybody they want. There's no limitation. But nonetheless, despite all the assurances and even the government saying that they will give minimum support price, but the fact that it's not written down in the law is what the farmers here are having a massive protest for. They're protesting, they're sitting along the borders of Haryana, of Punjab. They're protesting vehemently. In fact, the police have barricaded those areas, but instead the farmers are pushing those barricades. They've thrown those barricades into the river. They've pushed away the police aside. In fact, they've also thrown stones at the police. The police, of course, also using brute force to push these farmers behind. They're not allowing them to cross the borders into Delhi. They've used tear gas. They've used water cannons. They've used lathi charge to ensure the farmers are at bay. Their protest does not continue. The protest is in fact called the Delhi Chalo agitation. This was decided, it was announced, the farmers had already declared it that on 26th and 27th they're going to carry out a massive protest. Close to 1.25 lakh people, or rather farmers from the two states, are going to be coming in. Punjab and Haryana are going to be coming into Delhi only to make their voice heard, asking for the centre to amend the laws. Now, this protest wasn't given permission for. Remember, Haryana government, the Delhi government as well, not allowing farmers to cross the borders, considering it's a COVID-19 pandemic. Large crowds, first of all, a gathering is not allowed. And at a time like this, the farmers' agitation will just be a lot at hand for the security personnel as well as the respective governments who are currently fighting the pandemic situation. So despite permissions not been granted to the farmers now seem like they're on a war path. All hell has broken loose around the border areas. Let me tell you those areas which are currently looking at the kind of agitation here. In fact, the Ambala highway, where the Punjab Ambala highway, where farmers are currently seated. Even now as we speak, they're still seated, they're agitating there. This is a 2-hour long clash that took place along the Haryana borders, the highways there. Also, many of them have reached the Sadopur border, where still farmers are protesting. And then you also have, right now, farmers halted at the Shabad region of Haryana, about 200 kilometers from Delhi. There too, protesters are in large numbers. So there are about 5 highways that connects to the national capital, to Delhi. And all these highways, protesters, farmers, in fact, particularly, have come by. They're seated there. They're not being allowed, but they're seated there, adamant that they will not budge until they are allowed to go into Delhi. They want to sit up before the parliament and protest. They want the government to give them a word that minimum support price will be given to them. Now, it's not just a verbal assurance. They want the law amended itself altogether there. In fact, Arvind Kejriwal, the Delhi chief minister, has said that protesters must be allowed to agitate, but it should be a peaceful protest. Shouldn't be a violent protest. Farmers must be allowed to protest, but it must be peaceful. And he also calls this legislation, the farmers' legislation introduced by the central government, as anti-farmers. So Arvind Kejriwal has spoken in favor of these farmers, saying that the law must be amended. And then you have, of course, Amrinder Singh, Captain Amrinder Singh, Punjab Chief Minister, who has hit out at the Haryana Chief Minister, Manohar Lal Khattar, saying that brute force used against the farmers is only going to push them to the brink. So he's not approved of it. In fact, Amrinder Singh has lashed out at Qatar, Haryana Chief Minister, saying, do not use force against the farmers, do not abuse them, allow them to come into Delhi and protest peacefully. Farmers have been saying, you allow us to come into Delhi, we'll protest peacefully, but you don't allow us, we'll use force. Of course, the security personnel, the armed forces, in fact, they're right there, the BSF, they're ensuring that farmers don't cross those border areas. Now, apart from that, Qatar has hit out at Amrinder Singh, at the Punjab Chief Minister, saying that he's been trying to contact Amrinder Singh for the last 3 days, but Amrinder Singh hasn't been responsive. It looks like Amrinder Singh is currently trying to escape from any talks, productive talks, to ensure that the farmers' issue is settled. This is a political backlash that's going back and forth. But remember, so far, despite the massive agitation that's taking place, many of the border areas of Haryana and Punjab being blocked, massive traffic snarls, so far there hasn't been a formal voice from the government to have a dialogue with these farmers as yet. The government says we've already spoken to them. In fact, the farmers are going to be uplifted with the new laws. This is only politically motivated. We can't do much. So there's not been a formal amicable dialogue, but we're hoping that maybe in due course today or tomorrow, even tomorrow is the agitation there, something will come about, some sort of discussion will happen, and maybe the farmers will settle and push back their agitation. Now, moving across to Tamil Nadu, which is our top big story for the day here, Cyclone Nivar. Now, Cyclone Nivar has claimed 3 lives. This was expected to hit Tamil Nadu severely. In fact, Tamil Nadu is facing the second severe cyclone after 2018 Cyclone Gaja. Apart from that, the cyclone Amphan also very recently took towards the Bay of Bengal, and that too has resulted in massive destruction, but in the northeast part of India. But nonetheless, this has come down heavy on Tamil Nadu for the second time. But what is the relief here is that it wasn't as bad as expected. Cyclone Nivar, it did sort of cause some sort of destruction in terms of flooding, many areas being inundated. The worst hit area in Tamil Nadu is Kadlur district, which was severely hit. In fact, the Chief Minister has also, surveyed many of those areas which are currently flooded. But the situation is not as bad as Cyclone Gaja in Tamil Nadu that hit Tamil Nadu in 2018. Now, apart from Tamil Nadu, even Puducherry is also facing inundation and flooding because of Cyclone Nivar currently, which is currently even now heavy rains reported in Puducherry, Tamil Nadu, also in southern states of Karnataka as well, heavy rains being reported. Puducherry has imposed Section 144. Now, there was a very sad story of a man of course, we know that there's a cyclone coming. People were asked not to venture out, but this person stepped out of his home. He was just walking. A tree fell on him right there. It was just out of nowhere that the tree fell. He was crushed underneath. He died on the spot. And about 380 trees, I beg your pardon, 383 trees there have fallen across of Tamil Nadu area. In fact, this has resulted in destruction of property at large. But otherwise, people as of now have been rescued from many of the low-lying areas. 2.25 lakh people have been moved out to rescue camps. About 40,000 children have been moved out to rescue camps. 12 NDRF teams have been put in place to ensure that people are in safe zones. So this is what's happening in terms of the Cyclone Nivar. In fact, the Cyclone Nivar's intensity has sort of, it's reduced in intensity. From a severe cyclone, it's now come down to a cyclonic storm, and eventually will get down to a deep depression. That's what's expected. So what we are thankful here is that Cyclone Nivar, Tamil Nadu, has somehow escaped the wrath. It's not been so bad. But even now rains are there, so don't get out unless and until it's really mandatory. Cutting across to Delhi, Delhi is seeing a surge in COVID-19 cases. In fact, Delhi government now has been pulled up by the Delhi High Court. High Court is asking the Delhi government, what are you really doing to ensure that the coronavirus spread is curbed? Delhi government has been saying that they're exploring all viable options. They're trying their best to ensure that the spread is curbed. COVID-19 protocols that have to be followed. Police are on ground at every checkpoint ensuring people are wearing masks, maintaining social distancing. Many of the market areas, in fact, two big markets were temporarily closed. There were fixed timings as well. So Delhi is doing all that it can, but since the lockdown has been lifted largely across the country, people are out and about, so what much can we do? So this is the Delhi government's response to the High Court, saying that we are doing all that we can, ensuring that people are following rules, but at the end of it, it all depends on, of course, the government's preparedness along with the people's responsibility to ensure that they follow protocols. Now, one thing is about the fine. The Delhi High Court says the government must introduce an online portal where people can actually pay fine for violating COVID protocols online. And that money must be used for productive purposes, is what the Delhi High Court says. Now, Delhi government is fighting this pandemic, no doubt. Numbers are increasing. Again, the reason is pollution levels in Delhi, as well as the winter that's set in. It's only aggravating the COVID situation. Now, Delhi, so far, we're looking at just yesterday, the number of cases that was reported in one day was 5,246, and the deaths reported just yesterday were 99. Total cases now, active cases in Delhi at this moment stands at 38,284. Now, Delhi High Court's wrapping the Delhi government says that the one thing Delhi government must do on priority is to ramp up the testing infrastructure. Remember, mobile testing vans are now placed in many of the areas. So if you are passing by, you could probably spot a mobile testing van. If you do want to get yourself tested, you can stop and get yourself tested. It's about 450 rupees is what we understand, but prices could vary. This is not a confirmed price, but this is what we were told when the mobile testing van was launched. Now, a quick word on the vaccine. We know that all of you are really waiting for it, because unless the vaccine is rolled out, people can't move about their daily life. If you want life to get back to normal, the vaccine has to be rolled out. And here, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has held a meeting multiple times with state chief ministers and also with many of the scientists and those laboratories that are currently working on vaccines. Apart from international vaccines, which is Moderna, Pfizer and Sputnik 5 that are currently already working on their rollout plans, India is also working on Oxford's AstraZeneca vaccine, which is an indigenous vaccine here. It's developed by the Serum Institute of India. The CEO, Aadhar Poonawalla, says that this vaccine is 90% effective, but if given in 2 doses, the first dose 50% and the second dose of full mixed together can give you an efficacy rate of 90%. But otherwise, it's an efficacy rate of 70% is what we understand. Now, Poonawalla says that this vaccine is effective. It will be rolled out soon enough and it will be accessible to Indians possibly by early next year. So that's the promise that Serum Institute makes, and Prime Minister Modi has identified that this could be a potential vaccine for India that we will get soon enough. Remember, the other vaccines that I mentioned like Moderna, Pfizer and Sputnik are all vaccines developed in foreign countries like America and Russia, and they have their priorities set for their people. Considering AstraZeneca is indigenous, it's currently being, the trials being conducted in India and it's developed by our own Serum Institute of India, we might just be able to get it first. Of course, apart from the UK, which is tied up with us. So we're hoping that with Prime Minister Modi now going and checking on this vaccine and its development, we're hoping that India should soon get this vaccine, maybe by December end or January first week or the first month of next year. Because Prime Minister Modi is visiting Serum Institute on the 28th of December. So that's just about a month away that the Prime Minister will be checking. And this is, of course, after they've seen potential for it. Now, this is what we see of AstraZeneca, the vaccine. Apart from that, Prime Minister Modi today spoke. Today is the 71st Constitution Day. Prime Minister Modi spoke on the occasion. It's not just that. India is also observing the anniversary, or how can we say, remembering the 26/11 attack. What really happened in Mumbai when in 2008, when about 10 Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists came down, gunned down about 166 people right outside the Taj Hotel. What happened can't be forgotten at all. Pakistan, the Lashkar-e-Taiba claimed, in fact, they admitted to be part of the attack, to have orchestrated this entire attack. All of this was silently observed by Pakistan. Pakistan may have been the one who initiated this entire terror attack. So far, they never admitted, but this is what our intelligence report says. And Prime Minister Modi this time when speaking has said that Pakistan will never be forgiven for what happened. 26/11 still gives shivers down our spine. And for what really happened, Pakistan won't be forgiven. And New Age India today will not hesitate to fight against Pakistan if they continue to do so. If they continue to unleash terror, then we, New Age India, will not hesitate to hit back. That's what Prime Minister Modi has said. In fact, Prime Minister Modi also very cautiously observing the kind of military preparedness along the borders, also said that our armed forces this time around, enough is enough. The way we are prepared now must be enough to scare off the neighboring countries, including Pakistan and China, for the way they're trying to infiltrate along the border areas. India will not sit down watching this lightly. This is what Prime Minister's words are, and aptly so. We're looking at the kind of border infiltration that's happening, particularly in Jammu and Kashmir. It's shocking to say the least. Despite our armed forces being so alert, every other day we're hearing cases of terror being unleashed around the Jammu and Kashmir area. Just today, what has happened is another terror attack which has killed about 2 army personnel. In fact, 2 soldiers were martyred, and this happened right when 2 terrorists, unknown terrorists, came right in the middle in a crowded area and started firing upon army personnel, upon the military. And right at that point, our armed forces ensured that they were neutralized. But in the meanwhile, our security forces, 2 of them succumbed to the injuries. 2 of our soldiers, we lost them today. In fact, the army in its statement has said that the area was quite crowded. It was quite difficult for them. But the troops exercised quite some amount of restraint and ensured caution that the public were not hurt and there was no collateral damage at the end of it. But eventually, our 2 soldiers succumbed. And remember, another terror attack here in Jammu comes on the occasion of 26/11 terror that happened in Mumbai. This is a occasion of that, and this is also right ahead of the district development council elections that's happening in Jammu and Kashmir. So there's a lot of friction after the abrogation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir. There's a lot of friction, a lot more terrorists coming and trying to infiltrate towards the border. But it seems this time our security forces, who are rampant across the Jammu and Kashmir, keeping a close watch, are quite vigilant. They are neutralizing one after the other, and they're pulling up Pakistan, pulling up those terror groups, naming and shaming them, unlike what we've seen over the years. This time, our country has been a lot more active. Now, BJP, on the other hand, let's cut across to a little bit of politics here. Moving to Hyderabad, we know that Hyderabad is now approaching the municipal elections in Hyderabad. The Greater Municipal Corporation elections in Hyderabad is fast approaching. It's in December, and the Saffron Party, BJP, is campaigning like it would for a parliamentary or an assembly election. It's a massive campaign plan and strategy that they've put in place. And imagine, they have all the star campaigners who are coming to Hyderabad to campaign. And that includes, of course, Amit Shah, you have JP Nadda, Smriti Irani. You're looking at Tejasvi Yadav already on the campaign trail. He's a BJP Yuva Morcha chief, and he is already out there on a regular basis campaigning. But apart from that, the bigwigs, heavyweights, Gautam Gambhir, like I said, Smriti Irani and Saina Nehwal, who also hails from Hyderabad itself, all of them are going to be on ground campaigning for the municipal elections. So it's not just, remember, this is not just about a municipal election that the BJP is showing so much importance to, but imagine the strategy that they're trying to put in place. They're basically getting up and setting the stage right for the upcoming assembly polls, which is 3 years away. But they're not going to wait to plan out a design and actually work this out, because eventually Telangana has been the bastion of the KCR. So it's not going to be a cakewalk for the BJP. They've got to do some groundwork, and they're starting much early. That's what we see here. Now, BJP has released a manifesto for the municipal polls, and that's also quite interesting. As much as they accuse the KCR government of giving out freebies, the BJP also now giving out freebies, multiple freebies, and it's quite lucrative. Let me remind you that the promises include here free electricity if you're consuming below 100 units per month. They have free water supply that they've promised to the people in Hyderabad, to all houses, and free travel to women in metro and buses. So that's quite interesting and lucrative for anybody who wants to vote there, undoubtedly. So this is BJP's plan. Apart from that, they've also promised 25,000 to each who've been affected severely by the recent floods that took place in Telangana. Now, this is the BJP's tactics, strategy, if we can call it, to lure voters. Now, this comes at a time when KCR government has also announced freebies, multiple freebies there. So it's a win-win for it appears for voters on ground. Let's see who they vote for. They're an intelligent lot. Whoever it is, may the best man win, right? Now, the first reaction coming in from the BJP MP Tejasvi Surya. Remember Tejasvi Surya, who's been protesting there. He is an FIR has been filed, or a complaint has been filed against him by the Telangana cops itself. Suo moto complaint has been filed for him going into the Osmania University just day before yesterday. In fact, Tejasvi Surya was stopped right outside Osmania University. He wasn't allowed to go inside, but he moved the barricades. He and his supporters managed to push in and meet the youth of Telangana there. This hasn't gone down well with the KCR government. The police have filed a complaint, and he under the sections of criminal trespass and other sections of the Hyderabad City Police Act. Tejasvi Surya says, you can complain or file complaints on me as much as you like, but this will only make the BJP stronger. Tejasvi Surya reacting to that. Now, that apart, BJP also releasing a manifesto in Jammu and Kashmir. Remember, Jammu and Kashmir's District Development Council polls are currently going to take place. It's coming up soon, and we're already looking at so much political activity there. Of course, the one highlight is the Roshni land scam, 25,000 crores worth land scam that it's touted to be, which accuses a lot of the local leaders, including Farooq Abdullah, a few of the Hasib Drabu, the PDP leader. There are a few of the local leaders who've been named, and the BJP says if in their manifesto that they are going to get back all the land that has been grabbed by the local leaders of Jammu and Kashmir so far. That's the promise in their manifesto before the Jammu and Kashmir's DDC polls. Apart from that, they've also promised that 70,000 jobs will be given to people of Jammu and Kashmir if they are voted. So this is a massive promise coming in from the BJP, and they can do it. They are the central government. They are in power. They have the strength to do it. Let's see what happens in Jammu there as well. Now, a quick word on a final note as I wrap here. A very sad news that's coming in from the world, in fact, global news that's coming in on Argentinian footballer Diego Maradona, who died at the age of 60. He had a heart attack. It's really heart-wrenching. One must know, as a football fan, if you are, then you might know the kind of fanfare the man had. He was known as one of the best. The hand of job goal, which is the most coveted. We've lost him. He had a heart attack, and that's that. The legendary man was put to rest. A few words that people described him of. In fact, a small story behind it was the way he came up from a slum in Argentina and rose to capture the imagination of the world just with his sheer magic on the football pitch. The way he played, it was absolutely amazing, eventually taking Argentina to win the World Cup in 1986. It was all thanks to Diego Maradona. And this man, like I said, he literally got Argentina to defeat England, and that was the goal that he took in that match, the World Cup winning match, the hand of God goal. I'm not a massive football follower, but I know a little bit of it. The hand of God goal that football fans admire and speak of even till today. That was the man who's today lost his life. In fact, last night. And this has not gone down well with the heavy, football community all across the globe. They're mourning his death and remembering his entire involvement and contribution to the world of football. Now that's that from the news of today. There are a lot more tidbits, but I guess that's it for now. This is a roundup for what's happening nationally and internationally. Thank you for watching. I'm going to come back tomorrow at the same time with the news across the country and the world. Thank you.